7 hard truths about nursing homes no one wants to admit. When I first walked through the doors of the nursing home, I thought I was doing the right thing. The brochures had promised comfort, safety, and community. My family believed I would be looked after, and I tried to convince myself that this next chapter would be easier, maybe even filled with companionship. But the moment that heavy door shut behind me, a quiet truth settled into my chest. I had just given away more than I realized. At first, it's the small things that catch you off guard. The sound of your keys no longer in your pocket. The smell of a room that doesn't belong to you, no matter how many framed photos you bring to decorate it. The way time seems to move differently, slower, quieter, stripped of the rhythm you once controlled. You start to feel it in your bones. Freedom is gone. What no one tells you is how fast regret can grow. It seeps in during the long hours of silence when the hallways echo with loneliness. It whispers to you when you see another resident staring blankly at the wall, their story untold, their dignity slipping away unnoticed. You think of your own story, your own life, and wonder if this is where all those years of hard work were meant to lead. I don't say these things to scare you. I say them because they are true. Too many of us walk into these homes with hope, only to discover a reality we wish someone had warned us about. And while I cannot change the choices I've already made, I can open my heart to you. There are 7 hard truths I learned too late, 7 realities that changed everything I thought I knew about aging, family, and dignity. These are the truths no glossy brochure will ever print. But you deserve to hear them before you or someone you love takes this step. Because once you know them, you cannot look at life or your choices the same way again. Number 1, the loss of independence is crushing. The first thing that breaks you inside a nursing home isn't the silence or even the loneliness. It's the realization that you no longer get to live life on your own terms. For decades, you decided when to rise with the sun, when to sip your coffee, when to take a slow walk in your backyard, or sit on your porch and breathe in the evening air. Independence was not just a habit, it was the very essence of being alive. And suddenly that essence is stripped away. In a nursing home, life is dictated by a schedule that is not your own. Meals arrive at the same hour every day, whether you are hungry or not. Lights dim at night even if you're not ready to sleep. You wait for staff to come help you dress or take a shower. And even those personal moments are rushed because there are too many residents and not enough hands. There is no spontaneity, no choice, no quiet luxury of saying, "I'll do this later." Instead, you become a passenger in your own life, watching others decide the route. It might sound small at first, just meals, showers, bedtimes. But independence is built on these little freedoms. When they are gone, your dignity suffers. You start to feel less like a person and more like a number on a clipboard, another task to check off before the next shift ends. And it gnaws at your heart because you remember when you were in control. There were mornings when I wanted to sit outside with a newspaper just a little longer, to watch the sun rise slowly and sip my coffee in peace. But here, the door was locked, or someone insisted it was time to move along. There were nights when I wanted to stay up remembering old songs, but the lights were out, and silence pressed in like a weight. Slowly, those little denials add up until you no longer fight them. That's when you realize the crushing truth. You've surrendered not just your freedom, but a piece of your identity. And here's what hurts most. Independence is the heartbeat of hope. When you control your own steps, you believe tomorrow can still be shaped by your choices. But in a place where every hour is structured by someone else, the days blend into each other, and hope thins. You begin to question whether you're living or just existing. That loss is not written in the brochures, but it is felt deeply in the silence of every hallway. Number 2, loneliness, surrounded by people. You might think that being surrounded by other residents would mean companionship, laughter, and shared stories. But the truth is far colder. Loneliness doesn't disappear just because there are people nearby. In fact, there's a special kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded yet unseen, from sitting in a crowded room but feeling invisible. That is the loneliness that thrives inside nursing homes. At first, I thought the community aspect would bring comfort. Meals taken together, activities arranged, faces to greet in the hallway. But what I found was different. Residents shuffle quietly, some lost in their own thoughts, others too weary to begin new friendships. Many are grieving silently, the loss of a spouse, the ache of family who rarely visits, the slow decline of health that weighs on the spirit. Conversations don't flow the way they once did. Instead, silence settles heavy like dust. And then there is the ache of absence, the children and grandchildren who used to call often, but whose voices fade with time. The visits that grow less frequent as life pulls them in other direction. You sit by the window, waiting, watching for a familiar car to pull up, hoping this week will be different. But too often the hours stretch long and empty. You feel the sting of being forgotten, even if no one means to forget. Loneliness inside a nursing home is not just emotional, it is physical. It shows in the slump of shoulders, the blank stares at television screens, the quiet meals eaten without conversation. You long for someone who remembers your life story, your jokes, your quirks, the details that make you more than just a resident in room 1. Without that, you begin to disappear in your own eyes. The paradox is painful. You are surrounded by people, yet starving for connection. You see staff rushing past, kind but hurried, never able to sit long enough to truly listen. You see other residents, but they too are wrapped in their own grief, their own silence. And so, day after day, you carry a loneliness that feels heavier than any physical burden. What no one tells you is how deep that loneliness cuts. It doesn't just make you sad, it eats away at your will to live. Because life at its core is about connection, about being known, loved, and remembered. When that is taken from you, when you sit in a room full of people but feel utterly invisible, regret sharpens its edge. You wonder if staying home, even with struggle, would have been better than this quiet fading. Number 3, the financial burden that no one warned me about. When people talk about nursing homes, the conversation almost always focuses on safety, medical care, or convenience. What no one says out loud, at least not until it's too late, is how staggering the cost truly is. Not just in dollars, but in the emotional weight of watching a lifetime of savings vanish before your eyes. I had worked hard my whole life. I saved. I went without luxuries so that I could prepare for the future. I thought I had done everything right. But moving into a nursing home showed me how fragile those plans really were. The bills came faster than I could have imagined, and each one felt like a quiet betrayal. It wasn't just the monthly rent, it was the endless list of extras: medication fees, special meals, physical therapy, laundry services, transportation. Things that in the brochures seemed included but in reality were added one by one like weights on a scale. Before long, what I had built over decades began to drain. It felt like watching a faucet drip steadily, knowing the well was running dry. And with every dollar, I realized something painful. This money wasn't buying joy, or freedom, or comfort. It was buying survival. Just the basics of living in a place that never felt like home. There's a loneliness in that too. You remember all the times you dreamed of traveling, of leaving a legacy for your children, of giving gifts that carried your love forward. Instead, you see those dreams shrink under the weight of invoices and fees. The money that once represented your hard work and hope for your family is now tied up in a bed, a room, and a routine you never truly wanted. I began to notice how differently I looked at time. Once the financial reality set in, each month felt like a countdown, not just of days, but of dollars. And the cruel truth is, in many nursing homes, once the money runs out, so does the quality of care. That's the part no one wants to talk about. The way dignity becomes tied to bank accounts. The more you can pay, the more comfortable you might be. The less you have, the more you fade into the background. This isn't just about economics. It's about identity. It's about realizing that after years of hard work, your independence and security are tied to a system that doesn't see you as a person, but as a source of revenue. And while staff may care, the system itself feels like a business first and a home last. When I speak to you about regret, this truth stands among the hardest, because while you can never get back the time you've spent, losing your savings feels like losing the power to shape what little time you have left. It forces you to face an awful question. Was this really worth it? Number 4. The erosion of identity. What truly breaks a person in a nursing home isn't just the schedule or the bills. It's the slow, steady erosion of identity. You come in as a whole person, with a history, with achievements, with passions and quirks and memories. But the longer you stay, the more those things seem to slip away, until all that's left is a room number, a file, a body, and a bed. I remember the first time someone referred to me by my room number instead of my name. It was small, maybe even unintentional, but it cut deep, because your name carries your story. It carries your parents, who gave it to you, your friends who spoke it with affection, your spouse, who whispered it in love. When that name is replaced by 12B or the gentleman down the hall, you begin to feel invisible. And it's not just the name, it's the environment. The rooms are all the same beige walls, the same generic curtains, the same sterile furniture. Even the decorations feel like they belong to someone else. You can bring photos, you can place a blanket from home on your bed. But the truth is, nothing can mask the sameness. Individuality is stripped down to what fits into a drawer or a corner shelf. Over time, you start to feel like you are dissolving into the routine. You're no longer the teacher who shaped young lives, or the soldier who once stood strong, or the mother who raised 3 children through hardship. You're not the storyteller, the gardener, the craftsman, the dancer. Those identities fade when no one asks about them, when no one cares to know. You become defined by your limitations rather than your life. This erosion is quiet, but it is brutal. And it makes you wonder, who am I now? If my memories live only in me, and no one around me knows them, do they even matter? That question haunts you as the days blur together. The hardest part is that you long for recognition, not the kind that comes with applause or awards, but the kind that says, I see you. I know who you are. You matter. In a nursing home, that recognition is rare. Staff come and go. Turnover is high, and few have the time to sit and listen. You start to feel like a ghost in your own life, present in body but absent in spirit. And so, regret deepens. Because identity is not something you can easily rebuild. Once it begins to slip, it's hard to grasp it again. You realize too late that a nursing home may provide a bed, but it cannot hold on to the pieces of who you are. And those pieces, once gone, are the most valuable of all. Number 5. The decline in health, despite care. One of the most painful ironies of moving into a nursing home is this. You go there, believing it will protect your health. But too often you find your health slipping away faster than it ever did at home. People talk about these facilities as places of care, but the truth is that care in a system stretched thin is not always the care your body and spirit need. When I first arrived, I thought I would finally rest easier knowing nurses were nearby. I thought the aches and medical worries would be less frightening. But what I discovered was a harsh reality. There are simply too many people and not enough hands. Staff rush from room to room, answering bells, handing out medication, lifting, feeding, moving, cleaning. They are stretched so thin that true attention becomes rare. You become part of a routine, a checklist. And when you are part of a checklist, your needs are only met in fragments. I remember nights lying awake in pain, pressing the call button, waiting for someone to come. Sometimes it was minutes, other times it was nearly an hour. By then, the pain had burrowed into my bones, and what comfort I could have had was lost. Not because the staff didn't care, but because they couldn't be everywhere at once. And you learn something about yourself in those moments. You are not a priority. You are simply one among many. Meals, too, become a reminder. Food is prepared in bulk, served at set times, stripped of the care and seasoning that once made it a joy. Eating, which should nourish not just the body but also the spirit, becomes mechanical. Your appetite fades, and with it, your strength. It's not just the body that suffers, it's the mind. Sitting in the same chair, staring at the same walls, doing the same scheduled activities. Stimulation fades, conversation dwindles, memory weakens. A sharp mind, without challenge, begins to dull, and you know it's happening. You feel yourself slipping, but there is nothing to grasp. The cruelest truth is that your health was the reason you came, but the environment itself hastens your decline. Lack of movement, lack of fresh air, lack of meaningful human connection, these things erode you slowly. And each morning when you look in the mirror, you notice how tired your eyes have become. You wonder if you would have been stronger, even with the risks, had you stayed at home where love and familiarity lived. That regret is heavy, because in chasing safety, you sometimes lose the very vitality you hope to protect. Number 6. The emotional toll on family. People think that when you move into a nursing home, the burden on family is lifted. They believe the guilt, the stress, the exhaustion of caregiving will ease, and everyone will breathe easier. But what I've learned is this: the toll doesn't disappear, it only changes shape, and in many ways it becomes even heavier. I could see it in my children's eyes. They told themselves this was the best choice for me, that I'd be safe, cared for, surrounded by others. But the moment they drove away after that first visit, they carried a guilt that hasn't left them since. Every time they came to see me, they tried to smile, but behind the smile was a question they couldn't speak. Did we do the right thing? The truth is, nursing homes don't erase responsibility. They replace it with emotional weight. Families still worry constantly about whether you're being fed properly, whether someone answered your call light, whether you feel loved or abandoned. They go home at night and lie awake wondering if you're lonely, if you're hurting, if you're silently wishing you were anywhere else. And when they can't visit as often as they'd like, that worry sharpens into shame. For the grandchildren, the toll looks different. They walk into a building that feels cold, quiet, and unfamiliar. They see their grandparent sitting in a chair, less vibrant than they remember, and they don't know what to say. Sometimes they stop coming altogether, not because they don't love you, but because it's too painful to watch. And that absence stings more than any physical ache. What many people don't realize is that a nursing home doesn't just change the life of the resident, it changes the entire family dynamic. Holidays feel different. Phone calls sound different. The closeness once built around home-cooked meals, laughter, and shared traditions gets replaced by awkward visits in sterile rooms. The warmth fades, and in its place comes a quiet sorrow that everyone feels but no one wants to admit. I think often about how different it could have been if I had stayed home. If my family had seen me not as someone they had to visit in an institution, but as someone still woven into the fabric of their daily lives. Instead, they carry this ache, and I carry the knowledge that my choice, though made with good intentions, left scars on the ones I love most. Regret deepens here, not because my family loves me less, but because I know how much weight they now carry. They may not say it out loud, but I see it. I hear it in their voices, and it breaks me more than anything else. Number 7, the silent waiting for the end. There is a truth inside nursing homes that no one says out loud, but everyone feels in their bones. Many residents are not really living anymore. They are waiting. Waiting for meals, waiting for medication, waiting for visits, waiting for sleep, and quietly, waiting for the end. It is not dramatic or loud. It is subtle, a slow dimming of the spirit. You see it in the way people stare at clocks, or windows, or the floor. You hear it in the silence of hallways where laughter is rare. Life here begins to feel like a countdown, not of years, but of days, hours, moments. I remember watching friends in the dining hall sit in the same seats, day after day, their conversations shrinking until only silence remained. Their eyes no longer lit up with hope of tomorrow's plans. Tomorrow looked exactly like today, and that sameness eats away at you until you begin to accept it. You stop making wishes, stop dreaming. You begin to wait. This waiting is heavy because it strips life of meaning. The rituals that once gave us purpose, family dinners, tending gardens, holding grandchildren, are replaced by routines that only fill time. And when time is no longer filled with joy, it feels like an endless stretch of empty minutes. The saddest part is that some residents surrender completely. They stop asking for more. They stop fighting for life. They fade quietly, not from illness alone, but from the absence of hope. And you realize, with a chill that runs deep, that you could become one of them. Regret sharpens in those moments. You think of the years you might have had in your own home, even with difficulty, even with risks. At least there, life still carried the spark of choice, of family, of love. Here, that spark flickers until it disappears, leaving behind only waiting. And the hardest truth of all, once that waiting begins, it rarely ends any other way. Conclusion. A hard truth, a softer hope. If my words sound heavy, it's because they come from a place of deep honesty. Moving into a nursing home is not the peaceful solution the brochures promise. It is a place where independence fades, where loneliness grows, where finances drain, where identity erodes, where health declines, where families carry hidden sorrow, and where waiting for the end becomes a silent routine. But I share these truths not just as a warning, but as a gift, because regret can only be redeemed if it helps someone else choose differently. If you are listening to me now, let this be the light I could not see in time. Fight for your independence while you can. Treasure your home, your memories, your freedom. Invest not just in savings, but in relationships, in connections, in moments that cannot be taken from you. Love your family with urgency. Speak your truth while you have breath. And if the day comes when hard choices must be made, make them with open eyes, not blinded by promises that hide the deeper cost. Life is too precious to be surrendered quietly. Hold on to it with both hands, with courage, with love, with faith. Because while regret can weigh heavy on one heart, wisdom shared can lighten the path for many others, and that, perhaps, is the one redemption left to me.